Bama, Georgia, game of the week. I don't need to say anything more than that, except that if Bama wins, everybody should be worried.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I've got a pair of fantastic gentlemen joining me today. Luke Robinson, Locked On Alabama. Clint Shamblin, Locked On Georgia Bulldogs. Luke is the gentleman immediately next to me there. Clint is underneath. That doesn't indicate anything except that I'm picking Alabama to win the game. Other than that, it was a completely random selection. And Clint, I want to start with you. Am I nuts for saying, yeah, Bama's at home here and Kalen DeBoer is really good? And the reason I say that Bama can worry everybody else if they win this game is this is year one with a quarterback that he didn't know until about 2 hours ago, a little bit longer than that, obviously. But if he in year one can just go toe-to-toe with Georgia, doesn't that mean that everyone's going to roll their eyes and go, oh gosh, Bama's just going to keep being Bama?
Yeah, we said long ago when the demise of Bama was there, we said, no. Kalen DeBoer's going to have to prove himself over the years, but make no mistake. This is talent rich all the way through, up and down, still got the tradition, still got that grit in there. We worried about this game. We have it circled. If Bama can produce one thing that's different, because right now the Milroe train, the Williams-Milroe connection with the explosiveness, if you look at the metrics, their explosiveness on offense is sky high. I think they're second or third. The grit, the determination of that running game we saw with Haynes starting to get that going. If they could prolong and get chunk medium yardage plays, I think everybody in college football needs to worry, including Georgia. Yeah, they go do. This is being in T-Town is huge get for Alabama. I think going on the road in the SEC, it's that old idiom that is so true, yet no matter who's playing, it's going to be tough. It's going to be raucous. If Alabama can prove that they can prolong drives, because I think Georgia's going to go ahead and take away that explosiveness, try their best to. If that gets out of the way and Alabama's still able to produce on this very elite defense, number 3 metric-wise in college football, number 1 in SEC, yeah, be scared because they're going to start running through the playoffs in a big way. I completely agree.
By the way, speaking of tough places to go in the SEC, I believe the new adage is everywhere in the SEC is tough except for Vanderbilt. Poor Vanderbilt, who catch more strays on this show than, frankly, they deserve. They almost beat Missouri last week in Columbia. Yeah. Shout out to Clark Lee and the Commodores. But, Luke, what's the vibe around Alabama going into this game? Because so far, the South Florida game wasn't great. The Wisconsin game was pretty darn great and looked the way that you would want it to. You were there up in Madison. What are your impressions of this Alabama team as they get ready to host the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some confidence, certainly. I was on a sports show in Montgomery today, and I said I think this is one of the rare games where probably the 2 best teams in the country, or at least 2 of the best, can come into the game both feeling like underdogs. Alabama is an underdog at home for the first time since 2007. Georgia just got knocked out of the number 1 spot by Texas without losing a game. And Georgia just, had a rough time at Kentucky, who got blown out in the same venue by South Carolina. So I know Kirby Smart's going, hey, they don't think you guys are any good anymore. It's hard to believe that both these teams can come in with a chip on their shoulder, but I believe that that's what they're going to try and do.
Clint, when Luke said that Bama's a home underdog for the first time in 2009, I saw you shaking your head, just like, oh man, this is ripe for a plucking. Is that how you feel about Georgia? Because they're my preseason national championship pick and SEC championship winner as well. I haven't moved off of that prediction. I do still think they're going to lose this football game. I just think it'll be the only one in the regular season. But what's on the line for Georgia in this game? How do they generate that chip on their shoulder?
This is SEC championship game all over again. We walked into the SEC championship last year saying, hey, we think Georgia's the more talented team, but they just got punched in the teeth, and Alabama kept hammering them up the gut and saying, we're not going to relent on this. And the two teams that scare me in the SEC, Texas fan, if they were here, I'm not worried about Texas because they don't have that grit and they don't have
Whoa.
I'm not worried. You can keep your quarterback play. You can keep whatever you – I'm not worried. I'm worried about trenches, and that is exactly what Bama has in droves. It's so it is worrisome. Underdog at home, like, oh, my gosh, that's so stupid. It shouldn't be that way. The two teams that terrify me on this schedule are Alabama and Tennessee, actually. Tennessee is physical. Probably, I mean, Clemson defensive line was incredible. Alabama might be the second best defensive line, but it's not crazy to say that Tennessee might be tied or to be on that list. So, yes, the grit and determination of being at home with the most athletic quarterback in the nation. That's not shade. That's not me saying anything. Milroe is a rock of granite with legs. The dude just can't be brought down. Plus the trenches. Yeah. Why in the world 2.5 points is crazy for me to be favored coming into T-Town with this.
So here in this first segment, one sec, Luke, we've had a shot at Vandy and a shot at Texas, which means that the same number of strays have been taken in Nashville as they have in Austin. And for the first time, Texas and Vanderbilt have something in common on the football field. Just had to point that out, Luke.
Well, first of all, I'll tell you what, I know that Georgia's in the same boat here. I wish we had Texas's schedule. I'll tell you, if I'm Oklahoma, I am fuming mad that I look at the way the SEC divided up the schedule this year, and I go, wait a minute. They get Vandy, Mississippi State, Kentucky. They get, I guess, they miss Ole Miss, they miss Bama, they miss LSU.
Texas has in SEC play. They have 3 games that are notable: Oklahoma, who they're much better than, Texas A&M, and Georgia. Yeah. But that's it. Those are the only 3 games on Texas's schedule where you go, oh, I could see them losing it. Michigan was one of them. They went to Ann Arbor and ran all over them, and that's why they're the number 1 team in the country right now. But look, as someone who doesn't have a personal dog in this particular fight, no pun intended there with Georgia, I enjoy the top 5 matchups from afar a lot more than I enjoy being a part of them as a fan, because there are a lot of stakes. But in the 12-team playoff era, the good news for both fan bases here going into this game, you lose this one, I don't even know if either team drops out of the top 5, Luke.
It sort of depends on how you lose, but I'll say this. It's also like this has become sort of the de facto rivalry in the country. I mean, they don't play every year, obviously, but they kind of do. And the other thing is these games are the best. I mean, Bama Online did like the top 5 Georgia games of the last 20 years or last 30 years, whatever. And the 2012 SEC title game, which I went to, which was unbelievable, was number 3. That game had everything you want in a game, and it was number 3. I mean, the game, I'm not trying to break Clint's heart here, but the 2018 SEC title game it had so much drama, it should have been on TNT. It was unbelievable. And then, of course, the national championship game, it was a tale of 2 halves. The first half was kind of boring, but it made up for it in the second half where it was just pure craziness. And, this is must-watch television. This is the best rivalry in college football right now that kind of isn't a rivalry because they don't play every year.
Dear Greg Sankey, please make these teams play every single year. Sincerely, the rest of America.
We prefer let's just all get to Atlanta and do that. I'm cool with that.
No, that works as well. Clint, I'll let you go first here. One key for Georgia to win, the biggest key, and your game score prediction.
Stop explosiveness. If the explosive plays aren't there, they make Milroe come up and read and get that intermediate passing game. They have a shot. You see him when he tries to step up in the pocket and footwork isn't great and he's not scrambling. I think if you limit those big plays, which is, I'm sounding like Kirby Smart, limit the explosiveness and control the trenches. It sounds dumb, but this is how you win this game. And don't be shocked. By the way, if you want to hammer a bet in this game, hammer the under. Just hammer the under in this game all day long. I think it's going to be very close. Georgia's going to want to stop the explosiveness and keep it close that way.
Luke?
Oh, man, I'm telling you, of course, my heart's telling me Bama. My head is just saying, why? I'm still trying to figure out, I'm like, Clint, why is Bama the underdog here? It seems like it shouldn't be. So does somebody know something I don't, or am I overthinking it? I mean, I'll say something like I hate to even throw out an official prediction because I hadn't done it yet, but I'm leaning something like 21-20 Bama, like an absolute classic Graham Nicholson kick a field goal at the end kind of thing. And I also think it's going to be some hero of the game that isn't necessarily Milroe or Carson Beck or Ryan Williams. I think it could be like a running back that maybe somebody like a Justice Haynes who has ties to Georgia. His dad played there. Or maybe it is Carson Beck, who was once committed to Alabama, doing something with his legs that would be sort of out of bounds. But I'm going to say that, but I'm saying it with like very little confidence.
Okay. Well, I like the Tide. Because they're at home. I'd pick the home team to win this game every single time going into it. That over-under is 48.5. Now, Clint, you said you really like the under there, but you don't seem confident in anything that you're predicting in this particular game. So I'm going against you there. I'll take the over 48.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. 27-23. The Tide win with a point total right at 50. Luke Robinson locked on Alabama. Clint Shamden let me try English again. Clint Shamblin locked on Bulldogs. See, slow down and make it work. Guys, appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Full Week 5 SEC picks. Is Arkansas going to win again? That's just a fun thing to even think about, and we're talking about it next. First, let's talk about FanDuel. Guess what, NFL fans? You can start the season with a big, and I mean a big, return on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. Not 2, not 3, not 4. It is number 1. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game that you really want to act on or check out, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's all right there. They give you all the information. And guess what? You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet over at FanDuel. If you want to bet college football, if you believe Alabama's going to win, you can bet them over at FanDuel. If you want to bet Georgia, then you can bet on Georgia, of course, because you can do whatever you want. FanDuel's got everything that you need. Check them out, FanDuel.com. That's the place to go. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Did you have Arkansas at this point in the season marked as a should-be undefeated team? Because in the one game they lost, it was over 600 yards of offense. That's Chris Gordy locked on SEC. Did you see this coming from Arkansas, and do you think they keep it rolling against Texas A&M?
Yeah, I did. Taylon Green, the Arkansas quarterback we had on Locked On SEC this offseason, and just listening to him and, I watched some of his film. He played in the conference championship game for Boise State last year, and I liked what I saw. And it was, the dual threat, maybe not the greatest passer ever, but his running ability you couldn't deny. And I just thought it was going to be a perfect marriage with Bobby Petrino coming through to Arkansas. Taylon told me that they watched film on Lamar Jackson, and Bobby Petrino showed him some of the playbook that he ran at Louisville. And I kept saying, man, this might work. And then I saw Jaquindon Jackson, who started his career at Texas, then went to Utah and came to Arkansas this offseason. I saw him in the spring game, and I went, whoa, that guy can move. He's he's a bulldozer. So I thought both of them with the Petrino, play calling was going to be successful. And I think I tweeted out this summer, I said, all the talk a year ago at this time was KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. I said, I feel like Arkansas is in better hands a year later with Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson. And so far through 4 weeks, they've made me look very smart. I mean, Arkansas right now is, 16th best rushing offense in the country, 26th best passing offense. They're 8th in total offense. I mean, Mike Elko, defensive-minded coach, but he's got a real challenge on his hands this week. And it's a neutral field game in Dallas that, rivalry game that A&M has largely owned, but it's because Arkansas makes stupid mistakes. I think it was a year ago. They're going in for the score. KJ Jefferson's just trying to get over the goal line. He goes over the top, it fumbles, and it's returned all the way the other way for A&M. I mean, take care of the football this week, and I think Arkansas's got a great chance at the upset.
Bobby Petrino's been so good at offensive coordinator, he has made a Houston Astros fan look smart. How about that? Never thought I'd see the day. But I think Texas A&M also showed something against Florida in that, look, I know the quarterbacks are back and forth and it hasn't been consistent, and this is a neutral site game. I'd feel a lot better if it were at Kyle Field. I like Mike Elko, though, and I think that Arkansas comes back down to earth a little bit against that Texas A&M defense. I think the Aggies win this game. I think it's decently high scoring. I'll go 31-26. Texas A&M wins.
I'm a little worried about the offense for A&M. Marcel Reed has been good, not great, in Connor Wegman's absence. And, he's kind of the dual threat guy, too, a lot like Taylon Green. He had 91 rushing yards against Bowling Green last week. But I'm still worried about A&M's run defense. You know, they were one of the worst in the country a couple weeks ago. They have improved. I think they're 62nd right now in stopping the run, but that's because Bowling Green barely ran the ball on them last week. They threw it, and they had to hang on for a 6-point home win against Bowling Green. I mean, this is at Kyle Field. So A&M's kind of playing with fire here with Marcel Reed. I know Elko said earlier this week that, you know, we're working out Wegman on the side. We're hoping to maybe get him back. I think that's all just smokescreen. I think it's going to be Marcel Reed this weekend. And if he turns the ball over and, you know, doesn't take care of it, I think this is a real ugly spot for A&M. But I don't know, man. I think Arkansas's defense really showed their grit last week in that road win at Auburn, getting all the turnovers. I think if they force Marcel Reed into some mistakes, Arkansas will win this game.
I think we'll learn a lot about Colin Klein, the Texas A&M offensive coordinator, and how great of a game plan he can devise to score enough against the potent Arkansas offense, as you talked about. Let's talk about a game that is maybe the most unpredictable yet high-pressure SEC game of the week. Oklahoma at Auburn. Both of these teams are just desperate for a victory right now, Gordy, and it's at Jordan-Hare, and that hasn't mattered a single bit for the Tigers. I struggle. As much as I like the team around the quarterback position, somehow the quarterback position at Auburn is worse than what it has been at Oklahoma. At least that's from my vantage point, and it certainly hasn't been good for the Sooners, but I like Oklahoma's defense. They're favored by 2.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. I think Oklahoma wins this game. I think it's ugly, though. I'm going 17-10.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game too. I don't think it's going to be as bad as that. Was it Arkansas Mississippi State last year? That was 7-3. I mean, that one set college football back 100 years. But you know, I think Oklahoma's in a better spot. They've made the quarterback change. Michael Hawkins was a very highly touted recruit, and a lot of fans were excited and actually calling for him to play more a few weeks ago when Jackson Arnold was struggling. So I think they're in a good spot. Like, if Oklahoma commits themselves to Hawkins, we saw his dual threat ability. They were able to score 2 touchdowns late against Tennessee last week. If he continues to progress and they continue to evolve the offense around him and his skill set, I think there's a chance Oklahoma's offense takes off and is really good by mid to late season if they stick with him in the game plan. Now, on the flip side, Auburn, they're just in a no-win situation. You made the change to Hank Brown. He looked awesome against New Mexico, and then Cinderella turned into a pumpkin last week against an SEC opponent. So, you know, Peyton Thorne played okay, you know, through the touchdown pass to Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think they're going to go back to Peyton Thorne, and it's probably the right decision. And if he can cut out the mistakes, I think Auburn can maybe solidify it. Would not shock me if this is a week that Peyton Thorne plays well and they come out with the win, and then suddenly Hugh Freeze is, all right, Peyton Thorne's our guy the rest of the year. We're committed to him.
Of these 3 games that I'm about to give you, Gordy, give me the one that winds up being the closest final score. Ole Miss against Kentucky, Mississippi State traveling to Texas, or South Alabama, who beat Oklahoma State last year, traveling to LSU.
Yeah, the Ole Miss-Kentucky game really intrigues me because I feel like Kentucky just played completely flat a few weeks ago in that South Carolina game. They got embarrassed, and honestly, they outright quit in that second half. I think Mark Stoops did a good job of getting the buy-in back from that team. They had a hell of a week of practice. They played their butts off against Georgia. It was a 1-point loss. It sucks to lose, and I know there's no moral victories, but it was a moral victory. You played your butts off against the number 1 team in the country and had a chance to win and lost by 1. I think you're going to see a really good effort from Kentucky. Let's not forget 2 years ago, they played, you know, Kentucky and Ole Miss played, and Kentucky lost that game 22-19. It's because Will Levis had a couple of stupid turnovers, and, you know, they had every chance to win that game late in that game, and they gave it away. There's a different Ole Miss team. Obviously, the defense has improved, but I think we still don't really know what Ole Miss is. I mean, there's no measuring stick of the teams that they've played. You played a bad Wake Forest team on the road, but other than that, it's been 3 high school teams you've played. So, I don't know. I think Kentucky comes ready to play. The key is going to be Brock Vandagriff. Has he gotten any better? Looked better last week, you know, against the Slappy that they played. But I think if he can be better and get the ball to Dane Key and Barry and Brown in those pass-catching weapons, I think Kentucky could find themselves in a close game. Look, Lane Kiffin, I don't know if he's blowing smoke or, you know, trying to gaslight us, but all week he's been saying this is an NFL caliber defense that Kentucky has, NFL caliber players. He may be just saying all that so that when they win by 20, he could say, man, see, I told you they were an NFL team. But I think he's legitimately saying they got some playmakers that are going to give us some problems.
I actually have a lot of confidence in Ole Miss. I'm going to go South Alabama, keeping it closer than 22. I'll take them to cover that 22 number, according to our friends at FanDuel. Even in Death Valley, UCLA went in there, gave them a push. I don't think LSU's on upset alert. I just think that's going to be the closest of those three games. Mississippi State is plus 39.5 at Texas.
The only quarterback that's played better, just maybe a step behind, when you talk about the Jackson Dart in the conference, Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, he has been lights out. And LSU's defense, if they could just get some stops, I think South Alabama will score in the 20s. But, it wouldn't shock me if they pull away in the second half and they win it, 49-20, something like that.
Speaking of the state of Alabama, I want your pick on Alabama and Georgia. I think the Crimson Tide are winning this game at home. I really just want to know, Gordy, if there is going to be a webcam of Nick Saban watching the game so I can see how he's reacting. Like, is he just going crazy like a normal fan does now in his living room? Like that old video of him at practice, like, no, Giselle, run the route again. It's cut. Like, is that what he's doing when he's watching the game on TV? I need to know. I need to know how he is.
He'll be on campus for game day. I'm sure they'll probably bring him up in a suite or something during the game, but I don't know. I can't see him fanning. I think he's probably more measured, sitting back with his feet kicked up, and Georgia hits a big pass play. He goes, that's busted coverage. Like, I think he's more measured like that. I don't think he's a fan like us going rah-rah cheering. But look, I'll say this. Georgia's pass defense has been very impressive so far. And, yes, look, they didn't play the greatest, cleanest game against Kentucky. But each week we start to see Clemson's offense roll. We look back on that week 1 game and go, it's a pretty damn impressive win for Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great point.
I think they're going to be tested. I think this is a game. Look, Ryan Williams has been awesome for Alabama so far. The stud, 17-year-old freshman. Look at him. You're playing a real defense now. You're going to play some tight coverage. This ain't, Bessemer High School or wherever he went. Like, you're going to have some really good stud corners covering you for once, this season. And so how do they respond? Look, Bama's got all the momentum, right? They're coming off a great dominant road win at Wisconsin. It's a home game. Bryant Denny's going to be rocking. But I will say, there's a reason why Vegas has still had Georgia as a favorite all week. I just got back from Vegas. Those buildings, there were no burnt out lights in Vegas. Those buildings are standing strong for a reason. They're usually not wrong on things. I've been thinking Bama all week, but I'm starting to turn the tide and go, what if Georgia executes on offense? What if Bama's offense looks like they did for 3 quarters against USF and Jalen Miller is under pressure and they can't run the football? This one could get dicey for Bama late.
I think it's just going to be an awesome football game either way. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. Chris, enjoyed as always.
Thanks, man.
Rutgers is beating Washington this week. Oh, and the rest of the games in the Big Ten. We're picking those coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money, 100 times on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Anything you want to check out over there, stat projection-wise, Prize Picks, that's the place to go. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. I think Washington should be very worried this week. Why? They're going to Piscataway, New Jersey, and they're going to lose to Rutgers. Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, is down below here in the triple box. Not the octo box, but the triple box. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers, is here because I thought he might be bored this time of day. So let's start with this Washington-Rutgers game, Roman. I've got the Scarlet Knights winning. I think Greg Schiano's team is just kind of gritty. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they're bad. This is a long trip. It is a short week for Washington. Rutgers is at home. I'm going the Scarlet Knights.
I mean, I don't blame you. It's also, like you can talk trash all you want with your Oregon background, but I don't feel it's a bold statement to say that when Rutgers is 2.5-point favorites per our friends over at FanDuel. So I don't know if that's necessarily a stretch, but yeah, for sure. Rutgers is a really talented team. The one thing I'm really be watching in this game is Jonah Coleman versus this Rutgers front seven, where they're giving up 161.5 or so yards per game on the ground right now. And Jonah Coleman said on Tuesday, "Hey, I have my best games on the road." We went and we double checked that. He had 168 total yards, 3 touchdowns against Wazoo. He had his breakout game at USC. He had 179 rushing yards at Colorado. So he does have some really nice games on the road. And this Rutgers team, as you said, Spencer, very well coached, really talented. It's going to be a very fun game. And as you know, I don't necessarily make predictions because when I do, they're wrong every single time, no matter what they are. So I think that this one is, I'm just going to say it is a toss-up, and it's going to be a really fun game in a very rowdy crowd.
If you're always wrong, why don't you just pick Rutgers to win the football game? This is an easy calculation to win points amongst Husky fans. I see. So you're thin-skinned. Got it. All right. Jacob Goins, Locked on Indiana Hoosiers, looking to go 5-0. I mean, look, it would be one of the early.
Say that again.
Indiana is looking to go 5-0 in football. And by the way, they have one of the easiest schedules, not just in the Big Ten, but in the entire country this year. They have Maryland at home this week, touchdown favorite. Are the Hoosiers getting to 5-0 and going over their preseason win total before we hit the halfway point?
Absolutely. Yes, they are, because they're not just Indiana good. They're just college football good. This is a good, solid football team. Are they a playoff team? No, let's be realistic. Probably not. Don't want to count anything out because you never know. But realistically, we're not wanting that. We're not asking for that. But coming into this game against Maryland, tickets are close to being sold out, which if you are not familiar with Indiana football, that's a big deal because fans typically are kind of hit or miss in terms of showing up for a game like this. But Maryland's a solid team too. My question is, can linebackers like Aiden Fisher and the boys get home on this Maryland run game and also get home on the quarterback for Maryland too, who can sling it around? He's completing 75% of his passes this season. So if Indiana can let the defense run, Curtis Rourke has proven already, Spencer, that he can do what he needs to do on offense. They haven't asked him to be this sexy playmaker. He just gets it done. There's enough ground game, enough passing game, and Indiana can put up 50 on anybody so far this season. So yeah, absolutely. Indiana will be 5-0 after this weekend. The schedule isn't all that bad, so watch out for the Hoosiers.
Just as we all predicted, Hoosiers at 5-0. And when I say easy schedule, folks, I mean this is what it sounds like for Indiana the rest of the year. Maryland at Northwestern, host Nebraska, host Washington, at Michigan State. Then you have Michigan at home, Ohio State on the road. Those might be a couple of losses. And then host Purdue. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say Indiana, you could look up at the end of the year, and they're a 9-win team. But let's pick every game in the Big Ten. We will go in circular order here, counterclockwise. We'll see if you guys can figure out which direction that means we're going. But we'll start with the Friday night game, which we've already kind of talked about. But I want a score prediction from you, Jacob, on Rutgers hosting Washington. I think the Scarlet Knights win a slugfest 21-17.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be where I'm going to live. I'm going to say 24-21 Washington, though. I'm taking Washington.
Yeah, Jacob.
That's right. Just to give myself a little good juju from when we beat you later on in the year. So don't be.
Okay. All right.
Are you feeling good about that right now? Indiana over Washington. Game is in Bloomington last time I checked.
Absolutely. Feeling great about it. Long way to go, but yes, Indiana will beat Washington later in the year.
I can't wait for that particular matchup because these same collection of 3 people are going to be doing a show, but I'm just going to sit here and, let them fight it out in the cage. Oregon goes to UCLA, big 24.5-point favorite. Some other books even have 25.5. Roman, are you going to try and speak the upset into existence here? I'm not. I think the Oregon Ducks get it done 38-10.
Yeah, UCLA wins by 40 plus. No, I'm just kidding. There's no scenario where that would happen. Yeah, this is not going to be close. It's going to be ugly. Oregon's going to win by a lot. It pains me to say that.
Yeah, UCLA is just, they're in shambles. They let Indiana take us down. They let Indiana beat them. It's bad for them. And Oregon, this is a get-right game, a figure-it-out game. They haven't looked overly pretty so far. They're going to look just fine at UCLA, where the stands will be even emptier than they are at Indiana at times. Give me Oregon big time. I'll say 48-10.
Michigan, Minnesota. This is in Ann Arbor, and Wolverines favored by less than 10 points. That makes me think Vegas knows something that I don't. Michigan isn't necessarily the explosive team that's going to blow you out, but their defense can be stifling. I've not been impressed with the Minnesota offense so far. I think Vegas is just wrong on that number. I think Michigan will find a way to cover 27. No, give me 24. 24-13 Wolverines over the Golden Gophers.
I've picked against Michigan when they played Texas on Big Ten Squad. Picked them to lose against USC. So I'm 0-2 with Michigan this year. Let's try to right that ship. I agree with you, Spencer. I think I'm not impressed with this Wolverines offense at all, but I love that defense. They got too many stars, and this Minnesota team is just not very good.
Our friends at FanDuel have this total between 35 and 36 points, depending on when you look at it. Tell me that's not the grossest total you've ever seen. Michigan
It's not the gross. Have you ever watched an Iowa football game? It's not the grossest total I've ever seen.
Happened last year.
That's true. That is true. I'm going to take Michigan, like you guys said. Defense will win this game. It won't be pretty. Give me Michigan 28, and we'll say, 17.
That's generous. That's incredibly generous. I mean, I had him at 13, which is just, radically different. Nebraska looking for a bounce back at Purdue, 10-point favorites in West Lafayette. I think Nebraska is a good team that had a bad game last week. Give me the Cornhuskers here, 31-13.
Yeah, I'm with you, Spencer. The same thing you can say about Minnesota, you can say about Purdue. Not very good. This Nebraska team, they didn't look very good last week, but I think they'll get right. And again, I have to say this 2 weeks in a row, this Patrick Mahomes, Dylan Raiola stuff, it needs to stop right now. I'm over it already. It's exhausting.
I'll never pick Purdue, ever, ever, ever. And this is really because they're just a bad football team. Nebraska 35-17.
Ohio State hosting, check that, Michigan State hosting Ohio State. The Buckeyes are 24-point road favorites. I have no confidence in Michigan State's ability to cover that number. Give me the Buckeyes 51-10.
Oh, you're giving them 10? I had something wild like, 58, 59.
I didn't say when that touchdown was showing up.
You know what? That's fair. Give me 59-7. Ohio State is going to roll, and it's going to be really, really ugly.
Yeah, our boy Jay is going to be excited on Lockdown Buckeyes. 45-3, Ohio State wins.
USC looking for a bounce back themselves. I think they get it against Wisconsin. Big favorite, over 2 touchdowns. I think USC throttles Wisconsin in this spot, 42-20, and I don't think it feels that close.
I'm not a fan of this Wisconsin offense without Tyler Van Dyke. It didn't necessarily look super impressive with Tyler Van Dyke. Yeah, Danton Lynn, that USC defense, they'll get right. They'll be fine. They'll win big.
Yeah, you said it, Roman. I wasn't a fan of Van Dyke in this offense when he was healthy. So USC will find a way to get it right. They will win. The line 15-16, depending on when you look. I'll take USC big. Give me the Trojans 31, Wisconsin 17.
Lastly, the surprise top 20 matchup of the Big Ten slate right now. Penn State, almost a 20-point favorite against Illinois. I think the Fighting Illini are a well-coached team, play a little ball control, even on the road. I think they hang around. I like Penn State to win 34-20.
I think it'll be closer than that, Spencer. Give me 28-24 Penn State. I've got them in the Big Ten championship. I can't necessarily pick against them. That was a preseason prediction. It doesn't necessarily look great right now, but I got to stick with it there.
Yeah, Illinois is going to keep this close. I don't know what Vegas is on. Maybe they do know something we don't. But no, give me Illinois to at least stay within the game, but Penn State will win. I'll say 28-24.
Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies. That's every game and how it's going to play out in the Big Ten this week. Fellas, a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Spencer, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.